Hey, this is Joe from SoFly, and in this video, we are going to export WooCommerce orders to Excel using WP All Export. So to get started, we'll go down here to All Export and select New Export. And then from the pull down, we'll select WooCommerce orders. Now you notice there's a bunch of other stuff you can export here. WP All Export can export any custom post type and all of the stuff you'd expect from a WooCommerce store. So in this case, we'll select WooCommerce orders to Excel, and there we go. Now you see here we have 5,759 orders to be exported, and that's all the orders on our site. Now, if we wanted to, we could filter these down, right, and just export a subset of our orders. And we can do that using any data associated with the order, the customer, or the product, right? So we can say, for example, let's say I want to export all of the products where the SKU contains Millen. So I have a whole line of products on my site where the SKU contains Millen and then a series of characters depending on which product in that lineup. And here we go. That whole product line has 914 orders associated with it. Now I can also export, based on let's say the billing state. So if the billing state equals California, there we go, 621 orders in California. And I can also combine these filters, right? So I can say, okay, let's say, for example, I have to pay taxes in California for all of a certain type of product that I sold within a certain time frame. So I could say, okay, give me all of the orders from California with this SKU that are in this date range. And I can even put OR operators in there too. So I could say the tax is also in New York. So I can say, okay, give me all the products from California or New York that have this SKU that are in this date range. So you can combine these filters in any way to get exactly the orders that you need in your Excel export. Now, in this case, we're just going to go ahead and export everything. If you want to learn more about filters, check out our channel, check out wplimport.com. We have a lot of documentation on there on this. Very useful. And we will now go ahead and continue to customize the export file. Now here on the left, this is our export. And then here on the right, this is where we can drag and drop data. So if I want to add the order total, there we go. If I want to drag and drop to rearrange these, done. If I want to change the column name, done. And that's it. So there we go. I've added the order total, rearranged some things, renamed the column, and that is how you create an export. Now, by default, this is going to be a CSV. With the CSV, what we can do is we can change the separator. We have some other options like whether or not to include the header row. But we're exporting an Excel sheet. So we'll select Excel over here. We have two options, XLS or XLSX. This bottom one here is the newer version. I say newer, I think it's more than a decade old. Either one of these are fine. Honestly, any spreadsheet software can open any three of these file formats. In this case, we're just going to select XLS, and there we go. We open this back up. You'll notice here we have a feed option. This is for XML feeds. So if we go back up here to preview, you can see now this is an XML feed. If you like, check out our YouTube channel, our documentation. Also, we have a ton of content on XML feeds and even using custom XML feeds for some pretty highly customized XML feeds that you can create. But again, this demonstration, we're using Excel, and there we go. Now, there's a few ways to add a new element here. We can drag and drop, for example, the order date, or we can go over here to add field and we can search, for example, the name. So let's say I want to add in their name. There we go. So let's check that out. Now we have our name here, our first name, and then we have the order date. Now let's say I want to make some changes here. We also have the order total. So first, let's take a look at the order date. So we have two options for the date format. We can use the Unix timestamp, which is basically like a machine readable view of the date. And then the other option we have over here is the PHP natural language. So you can Google this. Basically, however you want this date to be expressed, to be exported, there is a date format for you. In this case, I'm just going to use a simple one here just to get rid of the time. But you can, any date format you can possibly think of, you can express it here with a natural language format. It's a whole syntax. There's tons of options. Check it out online. So there you go. We've removed the time pretty simply, right? Now let's add a $ to our order total over here. So to do that, we're going to use a custom export field. Now here we can drag and drop fields from available data, add static text, and even use PHP functions. So what we're going to do is add static text. So I'm going to drag over my order total. And then I'm going to go to the front over here and I want a $. There's my $, and I'm going to call this column order total. And you can guess what's going to happen, right? There you go. We got a $sign right in front. Now we can do the same thing over here for name, right? I want their full name in my export, but first name and then last name in 2 separate columns. I don't want that. I want it in one column. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom export field, and I'm going to go down here to customer. We'll drag in first name, add a space. We'll drag in last name. And the column is going to be called name. We'll get rid of our billing first name, preview, and look at that. So custom export fields are a great way to really get exactly what you need in your export. And we can get a little bit more complicated with it too. So for example, we can put the address in here. Let me pull my billing address, go here, comma space, city, comma space, state, comma space, and postcode. And this is our address. There we go. Now, the next thing you can do here with custom export fields is you can pass data through PHP functions. Now you can imagine how that might be really useful, right? Like even just for the address. Like let's say I wanted to take my address and I needed to have a column here with the Google Maps link, right? A Google Maps link to this address. Now the way I can do that is I can take the address, I can write a function, pass that data through the function, and then send that to Google Maps, get the link returned, and then put that data back into my export file. Sounds complicated. It's actually quite simple. So the way it works is we're going to export the value returned by a PHP function. If we go down here to our function editor, so we're going to keep it simple for this demo, and we're just going to change the state. I just want to show you how easy it is to pass data through functions. If you're curious about and want to learn more about writing more complicated functions, like these are very simple. But if you want to learn about more complicated ones, check out our YouTube channel. You can also just go online and read. The nice thing is any PHP will work here. We also have some documentation on our site. We have a whole code snippet section with tons of code to get you started. So in this case, all I want to do is just show you how it works. So I'm going to change the billing state. The billing state is going to be CA, and I want to change it to California. So all I do is I already have my function here, change state. It takes the state, and then it returns this, right? str replace, so it's going to take my state. It's going to look for the string CA, and it's going to replace it with California. So billing state goes into this function, and then whatever gets returned by this function goes into my cell. So billing state, there we go. Preview. And look at that. California is now verbose. Florida is not. It's still the short version. So obviously, the function itself, not super useful. If I really needed this, I'd have to extend it to include support for all of the different states. But the takeaway here is that exporting your data through a PHP function is very simple. So there's 2 ways to pass data through a PHP function when you're exporting it. This is the first one. And the second one is the custom export field. So same thing again, we're going to drag in our billing state. And then what we do is we wrap it in brackets. So anything in this bracket here is going to be processed as PHP. So I have a bracket. Now I'm going to call my function just like I normally would in PHP. Open it with parentheses. We'll close it. And then we're going to close this whole PHP statement with the brackets. Now, it should be pretty obvious how this works, right? We're just passing billing state as a variable into the change state function. And then this is going to be replaced with whatever this function does. So we'll call this billing state, and we're going to get the exact same result as we did before. See, there we go. Now, the difference between these 2 options, obviously you have a little bit more flexibility here. So, if my function needed 2 things passed into it, if it needed 2 variables, you can just add the second variable there. If you're looking for something a little bit more like simple and straightforward, that's all you need to do. So those are the two ways that you can pass data through PHP functions. All right, so demonstration complete. Let's check out the rest of the data that we can export. All of our order data up here, and then over here we have all of our customer data. Down here, all of the information associated with the items that were purchased by the customer. And some more product data in here. All of the taxonomies related to the product, and then custom fields. So if you have a WooCommerce extension or some plugin or something that's adding custom data via custom fields to your WooCommerce products, here you go. And our product attributes, for example, our color and our size. So let's take a look. Let's also put in our SKU. We'll drag that in, put it over here. Now, if you remember, every order had its own row, but now we have products in here, right? What do we do if, for example, an order has 2 products? Well, here's how we handle it in WPL export. By default, we just added an extra row for every product. As you can see here, this order, 8965, 8965, same order, 2 rows, because there's 2 separate products. Now, we don't have to deal with it that way. We have some options. So first off, we can fill in the empty columns. We can disable this. And then now you can see we have empty rows for the duplicated data, right? So order 1, order 2, and then all of the order items are going to be below here. Now, if I really wanted to export it in this way, I'd have to deal with the custom export fields that I used to create these fields. And I'd have to tell it, okay, if there's no data in this field, then don't output anything. I'd have to wrap in a PHP function or something simple like that. The other option I have is display each product in its own row. We can disable this. And now, just like before, every single order is on its own row. And then we have multiple columns for all of the product data, right? SKU 1, SKU 2, product color 1, product color 2, etc. So that's how we handle multiple products in our export. For me, I want to export it like this, keep it nice and simple, and we'll leave it at that. So moving on, down here we have some more of our order data, like tax and shipping information, fees and discounts, and notes. So that's all of the data that we can export. And again, if you need more data, if you have something like some WooCommerce extension or a plugin that's adding data and it's not showing up in here for whatever reason, maybe it's in a custom table, maybe they're storing the data in some non-standard manner that WPL exports are not able to automatically detect. If that's the case, you can still get at the data. And the way to do that is with custom PHP. So you would just make a PHP function, give it the order ID, look up the data you need, and then return it, right? Super flexible, very powerful. So let me clean all of this up. One last preview over here, and we're looking good. Okay, so let's go down, we'll continue. Then we have some options. So our scheduling options, you can choose to run this export on a schedule. For example, every Monday at midnight, or every month on the first Monday at midnight, whatever you want to do. This point and click interface is part of our scheduling service. So it costs $9 a month. We also have manual scheduling over here. This is included with WPL Export Pro. So you can also schedule exports with cron jobs. You can read the documentation here for more information on setting up cron jobs. It's a little bit more complicated, but it's not too bad. Now, in this case, we're not going to be scheduling, so we'll disable this. If you're curious about scheduling, check out our site. We have a lot of documentation on it. There's a lot of interesting things you can do with it. This option here, export each WooCommerce order in real time as they're completed. So the way this works, pretty self-explanatory, right? Every time we get a new WooCommerce order, this export's going to run. Now, by default, nothing's going to happen, right? The export just runs. But you can integrate WPL export with Zapier. So every time an export on your site runs, it notifies Zapier and sends the data there. So you can run actions with it. For example, you can email the data somewhere. You can add the file to Dropbox. You can add it to Google Drive or Google Sheets. And you can integrate Zapier with scheduling too, right? Every Monday, I can have that export sent to me as an email. So combining all of these features together really opens up a lot of possibilities for what you're able to do. We also have only export orders once. Again, very useful when combined with automatic scheduling. So in this configuration here, every week, export runs, only includes the orders that were added in the last week, hook it up to Zapier, send an email. Every week, I get an email with this week's orders in an Excel sheet, right? Pretty cool. And then, the rest of these are pretty self-explanatory. We also have client mode. You remember when I was setting up my export, I was executing, I was writing and executing PHP code. Not so great if a non-admin has access to this interface, right? That's why we only allow admins access to WPL export. If a non-admin gets in, they can just write code to make themselves an admin. Oops. So with client mode, we enable this. We go over here, scroll down to the bottom, client mode, roles with access, editor. So with this configuration right over here, any editor can log into my site, and they're going to see a limited interface for WPL export. They're going to see just this export and any of the others where I've enabled this. And all they can do is run the export and download the file. That's it. Safe, secure, and they can have access to what they need to have access to. If you set up filters, then all of a sudden this gets a little bit more interesting. So, orders within the last 7 days, anytime they can log into the site, run that report, and get their data. And you don't have to worry about them, getting access to things they shouldn't have access to. So that's client mode. We have some more documentation on that and videos dedicated solely to client mode. Check those out if you're interested. For us, we're just going to run the export. The last thing here that I wanted to talk to you about is the BOM. So, for example, let's say we have non-standard characters in there, like, Chinese characters, things like that. Excel will generally kind of freak out if you don't include the BOM with these kind of characters. So what we do is we enable this by default, and then everything, exports fine, and you can load it in Excel. If for some reason you don't want the BOM, you can simply disable it. We'll leave it enabled. We encourage you to leave it enabled by default. Really, there should be no reason for you to disable this, but maybe you need to. If so, there it is. All right, so let's save and run the export. So this is going to take a few minutes. We got like 5,700 something orders to export. We'll let it run and we'll come back when it's finished. All right, so the export is complete. Let's go ahead and download it. We'll open this up in Excel. All right, and here is our export. So you can see here, we have everything that we set up, putting the name, the address, our product SKU, the size and the color. Then over here, our little dollar signs came in. Everything looks good. So, okay, now we have some other options over here. We have a secure URL. So we can give this URL to anybody. And when they go to it, it's just going to give them the latest version of our export file. If we want to stop their access for whatever reason later, we can remove the URL and regenerate it, right? We have our scheduling options over here, as we already discussed, and external apps. You can learn more about Zapier over here. I highly recommend you watch the video. Zapier is very useful. You can do a lot of very cool things with it. And then export, edit, import. Now with orders, not super useful, but let's say you have your products, right? What we can do is we can create an export of our products with just the fields that we want to edit, download this file, open it in Excel, edit those fields in bulk, so I can change all of my pricing or my product descriptions in bulk in Excel. Come back here, click import with WPL import. And then automatically, we don't have to set anything up. Our product data is going to be updated with the new version that we created in Excel, right? Now, maybe you might need to do this with orders. Maybe you need to change some format or something like that. If you do, this is how you do it. So that is all it takes to export WooCommerce orders to Excel using WPL export. Thanks for watching. Check out our YouTube channel. Check out our documentation at WPLimport.com, and we will see you soon.